maybe what brought us down, do you reckon?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, a bit more than 20 years ago, so probably 22, 23 years ago, when I was an art student at Curtin, I met Dave. He was going off travelling the world, and I didn't have the finances to do that, so I stayed at uni and then took a bit of time off and came down this area, and we started having this connection about what we've got on our doorstep while Dave was travelling in Nepal and hiking, and he was writing letters about up there, and I was writing letters about down here, and that was...
This is the days before email. It's not that long ago.
And it was so romantic to get these letters on Nepalese paper and this box full of all lovely stuff back in the student days. But I think that was the impetus for looking on our home turf and what we had that was within driving distance of the city. And we started making these long weekend trips and coming down and connecting with people, and sort of didn't want to go back to our life in the city. We wanted to create our family and make our roots here. So I don't know if this is how we normally start the talk, but this is where I thought it would be a good way to go. So we had this opportunity to look at property, and we started. Do you want to interrupt me? Or? Yeah, we originally got started over a bit more where you were just before, Valley of the Giants. We had friends over there. There was a youth hostel. We connected with the environment, and at the time there were blockades in Sharp Block,
yep.
Which has, over the years has become part of the Walpole Wilderness, and that is an area that is now safe from logging, maybe, or maybe not. So we started our journey by being interested in the environment and the forest and what we had on our doorstep. We started looking at property. We found this place here. It had amazing water, not a lot of infrastructure, a little house, and we just kind of jumped in and then sort of went, how are we going to make a living from this? Because our whole ideal was about that we wanted to make our living from the farm. Dave had farming in his background, but had sort of spent school years in suburbia, and I think what sort of came to me a bit today is the importance of mentors, and when people take you under their wing and they teach you stuff, or you just hang around and you learn stuff from them, and mentors have been very important to us. And even the beginning of starting the vineyard came through a connection that Dave's, the interest in wines came from a Swiss friend of ours who was importing West Australian wines. And we got an interest in premium wines, and that maybe we could do something like that here. We were completely ideal. We were trying to be as sustainable and green and have these amazing ideals, and reality was starting to hit because we weren't really making any money, and the little bit of money we had was quickly evaporating. But we've got this tiny little inheritance. It was $20,000 from Dave's godparent, and we thought, what can we do to try and grow and to make something for our family? And we just had this. You probably saw the vineyard on the way in. This perfect soil. We're into the Jarrah country here, so it's the pea gravelly soil. The sort of varieties that we wanted to grow would suit that area, and we just jumped in completely naive about how much it was going to cost us, how much work would be involved. But when you're young and naive and you have lots of energy and you don't mind ringing people people up and say, hey, can we come to your, plantation block and take some posts out for our vineyard? And, you're full of energy, so you don't feel stupid about doing those sort of things. So that's, we started doing it at a very grassroots level. And, a lot of the sort of vineyards that you visit or family wineries, they've come from a lot of money and had, money for lots of infrastructure. We've come from a very, make it happen through hard work and determination, and there's been setbacks along the way, which we could maybe talk about as we go. But in case I'm getting off track, do you want to have a chat now?
You're doing
So, in those first years that we arrived and we're trying to work out what we're going to do, we started doing the basic things of establishing, setting up production for ourselves. So we heritage apple trees, and we put a macadamia orchard in, which is setting up our veggie garden so that we're getting a bit more self-reliant, doing our own composting systems, just trying to revegetate this whole hillside. And on top of the hill, the first things we did when we came within a few weeks' stay was up on the hill planting a few thousand trees, and that was connecting us to the land. And there were a few cattle here. It had been used for grazing, but it's not something. Our neighbour has 900 acres. We have 100 acres, or they maybe even have more than that. And they don't make their living from that property. They both work in town, and that might be a lifestyle decision as well. Our lifestyle decision was we didn't mind being poor as long as we had a good lifestyle and we could bring up our kids and have time for them. And we've got 3 boys actually. Nelson's our eldest. So we were setting up things to think about the whole land as a system, as an ecology that we needed to look after, and the vineyard was really part of that system. We've got this amazing wetlands on our doorstep here, and over the last probably 12 years now, we've had spoonbills. They come every year, they nest, they breed, bring up their young, and sometimes we have a sea eagle that comes in and takes a few as well. But we've got frogs, long-necked turtles. We realise that anything we put on the vineyard can impact our system. So everything we do, we try to do it in as in a sustainable manner as we can. Organic if possible. We haven't gone down the organic certification path because there are a couple of loopholes and there are a couple of things that we could lose our whole crop. It doesn't mean you have to spray the shit out of everything, but if you are very careful and you look after the health of your vines, which can be through, Dave can talk about that, but seaweed, fish emulsion, you're looking after their health, then they're not going to struggle so badly if you have an impact of disease. So, off the track?
No, that's...
Anyone could just jump in and ask some questions, but I think we're still going okay.
You're telling a good story.
Okay, cool.
You're on fire.
So, great. Over the years, setting up the vineyard was one part of the process. It takes a few years for to be, having enough grapes, so 2 to 3 years. Your wines are going to be in barrel, your grapes are going to be crushed in oak for a couple of years, so your cash flow, so we're talking about cash flow and how this is going to impact what you do. We try to be mindful of staying small enough so that we can afford the outgoings until we're selling our wine. And I have to say, the first 12 years were pretty difficult. We were having a good life, but not having a lot of money. We had a couple of setbacks in the early years where a wine of, we had, what would you call that? We lost our production, set us back 2 years by a winery not looking after our fruit. So that was incredibly hard for a young family with 3 kids trying to sort of make a living, and then suddenly you don't even have your wine to sell. So we've had to grow a lot of resilience over the years, and you know, we've done a number of things that have just tried to keep us. You know, a lot of people sort of go, oh, we're making a bit of wine, let's make more and more because we're making this much money. Let's make heaps more and we'll make heaps more money. But the thing is, you've got your outlays that, you know, you've got to pay for the 3 years that you're doing that. And we decided, it was about 2008, so we had the global financial crisis, that we were too reliant on that cash flow, and that we had to be selling a certain amount of wine. We felt pressured to be trying to export.
Well, you're getting to more of that corporate side of things, really, that have you.
Yep, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, we could lead on. I mean, so obviously, you know, what we do, you know, you think about global warming, you think about all these external pressures that anyone in, not just farming, have to deal with. But then, you know, I think, and I brought this up in our last meeting, I mean, the corporate side of things has become probably equally as pressing. Big business, big end of town, the duopoly of Coles and Woolworths equally has an effect as much as all the external pressures we have of heat waves and droughts and hailstorms and the like. So, and I think we...
And this is Dave's topic.
We'll start from the start.
It's making a living.
Start from the start, like, you know, how your interaction with that.
Well, it's quite interesting. I'll go outside. I lived and studied in Germany for a couple of years, and it's not just Germany, but all of Europe, UK, North America, agriculture is subsidised. And the reason being, particularly the Europeans understand that they all went through 2 world wars and a depression where everybody starved. And they said, well, we're not going to let that happen again. Whereas in Australia, you know, we're too busy exporting iron ore and coal, and we've forgotten about the farmers that essentially built the country. And farmers really get a really rough time here. So, and now we have that duopoly of Coles and Woolworths that pay them peanuts, you know, and we live in a world today where the food just appears on the supermarket, and people have sort of forgotten about perhaps where that, you know, had to come from somewhere. And so, leading on from what Melissa was saying, you know, they were some of the things that you can all be idealistic, but then when you start dealing in the real world how business works, it's it's not that simple. So,
but did you ever consider selling to? So what would be one of the chains owned?
Well, Dan Murphy's actually approached us. It's a good story, actually. They approached us to sell our wines, and the contract came from the head office in Melbourne. And I looked through the contract, and I couldn't believe. Immediately they wanted 12%, 8% discount for what they call ranging, just to put it on the shelf. 4% discount for ullage. Ullage is what happens when wine evaporates in a barrel, but it doesn't happen in a bottle. So, you know, but they still, you know, they're going to slug you for that. Then they wanted us to set our wine at a set recommended retail price, but a clause in the fine print would allow them to discount it 20% less than what we'd be selling here at the cellar door, which I think is totally unethical. And it's amazing how many people I tell that story to, and they said, it's funny that we're in the cellar doors in Margaret River and the wines are all more expensive, buying it direct at the winery, than we could get it at the discount, you know. So, and unfortunately, you know, if you're a medium-sized producer, if you don't deal with those guys, you've got nowhere to sell your product. We were small enough that I could tell the guy effectively to visit a taxidermist, and you know, and now what we do is even a vineyard as small as ours, we still sell a little bit of surplus fruit, so that we don't make too much wine that we're in a position where we have to deal with them. So as much as dealing with all the external shocks of, you know, reduced rainfall and heat waves and all those, which are, you know, is equally significant pressures, we've got one more to have to deal with as well, and that's big business who, big end of town who have that influence on our production, food production, and it's, I find it very distressing, really. not just for us, but for the quality. I mean, in France, if the farmers get a bad deal, they just drive their tractors onto the freeway and block it, you know. Or the other day they went under the Eiffel Tower, I think, because the wolves have got out of hand, killing all their sheep, and you know, let a whole flock of sheep out under the Eiffel Tower, you know. But the tyranny of distance in Australia doesn't really allow primary producers to do that. We're a long way away from capital cities, so you know, you're not going to get farmers here driving their tractor up to park outside of Parliament House or in St George's Terrace. It just doesn't work. But
so, Dave, I was just going to
go
say,
on.
what's your business model been? If you looked at the going down, you know, the corporate route and
Yeah.
went no way,
Yeah.
so you have to develop a different.
Well, we've developed basically our cellar door, so we're here 7 days a week, and in that we've built up a mail order through the internet. So, and then
So we have a pretty strong mailing list. People are quite loyal to us that have either come through the cellar door, being recommended, try our wines, love them, and just love the stories. Through our newsletter, we tell the stories of what's going on in the farm, and they often have a funny twist, like help, the shed is falling down, or buy some wine, or something a little bit quirky but true, because you can't sort of pretend that that because people's got come and you're living the dream, and we kind of go, but the dream does take quite a lot of commitment and hard work. So there is an idea out there that it is.
Yeah.
You mean you're not sitting on the veranda sipping the Chardonnay?
Yeah, well, later on we do that.
You do sometimes, but it's not every day.
No. But yeah, so at that time, we thought that we either had to get bigger to sell to those markets, but we decided that we would get smaller, so we had control of our business. It wasn't in the hands of Coles and Woolies and what they thought they wanted to sell, regardless of what we had or what we could grow. So we focused on our cellar door sales, our mailing list, and premium kind of restaurants in the city and different places. So that's kind of what our model is based on, and that's really what has worked for us, because that allows us a lifestyle, and we're not a slave to our work, are we? We are at times, but not all the time.
And we went to the butter factory this morning,
yeah.
and you've got a pride of place wall now.
Got a wall there.
Yeah. So you all saw Melissa's work in the butter factory, and so I guess that's helped, hasn't it? That you've been able to work from your studio as well as.
Yeah. So it's that we have a quite full lives doing stuff. So
well, we made a decision whether we could still be sort of like artists. And keep the lifestyle rather than selling out completely to chase the dollar, and so it's always a juggling act about keeping that honest. Tremel makes amazing artwork, and I make a bit of furniture and build a little bit of building. So
so we can still work on those pursuits as well, and do work, like I'm on school council and do stuff for Education Hall. I mean, most people that you meet in small communities, they're doing quite a few things on different, communities and different groups, and that's what we feel is important in being in this type of community.
Yeah, that's right. Well, a lot of us all started, I think probably Louise part of that too, where we spent, certainly my first year down here, most of it was spent out in the forest protesting, but we did the sort of very Gandhian non-violent direct action, and all these years later we get on extremely well with the local department of, I still call them CALM, but DEC, DEC, whatever they keep changing their name.
It's now DPAW.
DPAW. So, and because, we'd offer them a cup of tea, we didn't swear at them, we weren't abusive, we didn't wreck their machines, and we gave them hell trying to get the logs out, but we won that battle, and it was the turning point for me there was that was the former Shire President of Denmark, a Dutchman, Rob Verslewis, said to me one time, he said, "David, do you realise 85% of what they're taking out of that forest goes as wood chip or charcoal?" And I was just gobsmacked. I had no idea. I thought it was the other way around. 85% log, 15%, and it was 85% went for wood chip or charcoal. Every single marri tree got chipped, and I make furniture out of it now. It's a beautiful timber. Every single tree. 400-year-old trees all went to the chipper, and it was just disgraceful. So, I just didn't do a lot on the farm the first year down here. I was busy out there, but we won that battle, and it was one worth fighting for because I couldn't believe this asset that they didn't have to plant. They just come in and the government awarded contracts for timber, giving it away basically. So, and it's a really precious resource down here. That to keep those forests. They're special, they really are.
We've planted one, so in another
and we were lucky,
years.
through green schools there, that whole hill was cleared and it should never, you can see how steep a slope we're on. It was far too steep to farm. And through green schools they provided the seedlings and we did all the fencing, preparation to plant and all the planting. So, and we put in 3,000 yellow tingle, 1,000 red tingle and then a full complement of mid-story, understory, flowering shrubs, so turned it into a forest rather than a plantation. And you can see, you look at it now and it's hard to imagine that's a tree plantation because it's mixed species and they're different size, they're not all just tall trees. A lot of the trees we planted down the driveway, I think perhaps a little bit too close. So it could be a bit of an issue in a few more years.
we didn't try to navigate the busing.
No. We don't get many buses.
No.
We say, oh, you're so far, away or off the beaten track or whatever. We go, well, yeah, we like it quite like that, actually.
That was one of the things I wanted you to comment on, and I thought Nelson might like to comment on
I was
too, what it's like for you, the lifestyle that you've had, and also other people would consider it to be reasonably isolated.
Yeah.
Well, he's just been in the city for nearly a year.
I know he has, but
he's
you've
moving
just come back, so what's your reflections on it?
Well, it's funny, I had a kind of isolation from people out here which I disliked. I loved being out here. I was healthy, happy, beaches right there and with the people I love, but I just didn't have those friends and that group of people. And I had friends in Albany, which is like an hour drive away, and I was 18, so woohoo, I can drink. And so driving.
You're connecting with people here.
driving an hour, just to go drink with some friends and then drive home the next day was a bit risky, even though next day I'm sober and all that, but it's still an hour drive, and I wasn't really very connected with those people, and I wanted to go to the city and see that, so went to the city and cooked for a year and lived up in Trigg, north of Scarborough. And it was fun. It was nice to get to the city, but I just couldn't get that space to think. I go to bed, my housemates are just rooms away from me, and they're all within a few meters. I hop on the road. At one stage I was working at 4:30 in the morning, so I did get some meditative space where I could just chill out, but most of the time it's hop on the road and there's people everywhere, and I just had no space to myself and I couldn't think.
Because this is where he's grown up.
Yeah. Whereas if we go up on the hill and have a campfire, it's just I just think, and I can just feel my brain just kind of having all this space to think. You just hear the frogs by the river and maybe some dog I don't know how far away, way off on Tyndale Road, somewhere over there. It's just I can think, I can breathe, and
So you don't mind the isolation?
I love the isolation. It's annoying that my car gets dirty. I have to wash my car twice a week, whereas Perth would be once every 6 months. But
yeah, and our middle son would say, Well, the internet's really shit, but that's a stage he's going through.
But I think the internet's actually breaking down in Denmark. Every time you walk into a shop at the moment, someone's on the phone.
Oh yeah, well the 3G was out
There is a
yesterday.
problem.
Yeah, but it's ongoing.
Well, the Chamber of Commerce said that the exchange in Denmark is actually chained back full. It can't actually cope with any more connections.
And that is actually a bit of a problem for us because we do rely on, that is our business.
Well, we had no
our
telephone
telephone was out
for
for
a
a
week.
week, which means our FPOS didn't work. So we're trying to go, could we take your credit card details and we put it through later? Not really fantastic way to do business.
Well, no, they just said, Telstra said, oh, we'll transfer it to your mobile. The problem is the mobile doesn't work. So,
Yes, but that's
The joys
an
of being in the
ongoing
country,
issue in rural areas is access to, because that's how people do business now, and that's how we connect with our membership is through newsletters and trying to upload pictures and keep your website going and all of that. Yeah, you do rely on that, and so we do want some of the perks of the city, but
Pick and choose.
Generally maybe there's just some questions and that would lead us into some deeper
yeah,
discussion.
so you can ask us
and stuff,
something
or-
now.
Any questions?
You said that you do most of your business through Salador and a few premium restaurants in the city.
Yeah.
What about independent, local bottle shops? Do you stuff?
Well, we do in Denmark, but look, really, between Coles and Woolies, I think it's near on 90%
Oh yeah.
that they own. They own everything. So,
We've had a couple, and that's a wine box in Shenton Park and Nedlands, and Lavinia in
Mount Morley,
Mount Morley, yeah.
couple down Frio way, but
Yeah, but
it's very hard. We find it really hard with marketing because we're too close to it, and most bottle shops these days just get inundated day in day out by sales reps,
and they all
and they treat
deals
you, and they offer take one case and we'll give you 3 for free, and most of the people, and look, a lot of them are really good friends of ours, but that own wineries, they're doctors, they're QCs, they're oil industry executives, they make bucket loads of money and they just play, and they run year in, year out at a loss. There's a guy up the road, he is a QC, so shout at what they charge per hour is extortionate, but I think his wife said they ran at $230,000 a year loss every year.
So you
for
have to
probably-
make a hell of a lot of money to afford
So-
to run that.
Yeah, for sure.
And another good friend of ours, his brother...
Just give us 10% of that, as that would be our income.
His brother's next door to Mosswood in Margaret River. They're into gold, old Kalgoorlie family, and I think he said the same. His brother, $200,000 a year loss.
Yeah.
They could afford to do it, because they're making ridiculous amounts of money and write it off. We couldn't.
Yeah.
So I think for us
a lot
it was.
of them come word of mouth to our restaurants.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I tell people, look, in any business, profession or industry, if you're really good at what you do, word gets out there amongst your peers, your competitors, your colleagues, and that takes time, but it's a lot more resilient way of than proofing your business than just lots of advertising and
You're right.
shouting out from the rooftop how amazing you are and sounding like a complete tosser in the process. But it happens organically and slowly. So it took us a long time to finally get to the point now where we don't shudder about the bank manager ringing up and saying, you're behind or you're overdrawn, or so, that took a long time to...
You get automated messages for that now.
It can't come through if you're not connected.
That's it. Well, we don't get that too much anymore, thankfully. But look, we're still always pretty close to the edge, and we have this conversation about keeping our artistic integrity as opposed to going off and doing something else to get a little bit of extra income in. So it's a fine, it's a balancing act. I
Do
think
you want to talk a little bit more also about the decision that you've made? We have also visited Richard and Belder's
okay.
and just talk about the dilemma that he was in last year and how he had to resolve that dilemma.
Yeah, well, having no crop, and I mean the same thing can happen to us. We had one year where nothing ripened, so we didn't pick any of our fruit, and we had the entire year where we pruned, we put all the nets on the vines, we did everything right. And I think that's when I was saying earlier, these are the external David Brewer, very famous organic grower, Temple Brewer Wines, lost his entire Verdelho crop in one day to sunburn. Large areas of Franklin wineries, vineyards got wiped out in one night from a big hailstorm. So
That's one of the reasons why you don't go organic certification.
look, the organic, look, I tell people it's not worth the paper it's written on, to be honest. Truly, I believe that. I say, there's our wetland. Fisheries have come here and found 2 new species of native fish they haven't found anywhere else. Sorry, 1 new species. But we've got 2 native fish that live in there. We've got the frogs, long-necked turtles, the marron, anything that's aquatic. If you're not doing the right thing, they're particularly frogs, the first thing that goes. So, and I point out to people that we've got gastrolobium growing extensively through the wetlands, and it's one of the most toxic plants around. It's what they used to make 1080 fox baits from. And if every year farmers' cattle get out into the wetlands, large numbers die from eating this plant. It's extremely toxic. It's organic. So, so it's about, I think, for us, we're really conscious about what we use, and basically whatever we put anywhere on this property, that's our drainage. Right there, that's the sinkhole it all ends up in. So if we don't do the right thing, the wetland's really going to suffer. And it's quite evident when you've got all the birds nesting, not just the spoonbills, all the cormorants and the ducks, swamp hens. You know, you've got a really healthy system going on down there. There's a very famous vineyard in Margaret River that's certified biodynamic. It's full of CCA treated pine poles. And I know it was thoroughly drenched with dildren back in the 70s when it was established, so nothing organic about either of those two. Yet they've managed, that's Cullen's by the way, managed to get certification. So Richard and Valda had that problem with a dieback, and actually the product that they were using wasn't particularly noxious, but it wasn't certified. And I know Richard was very cranky that one person had the power over whether this product would be, you know, allowed to be
and
used or not.
Yeah, good sense sometimes doesn't necessarily prevail on.
We were perhaps a little bit too idealistic when we came here, you know, and I think, you know, it's one of the things. I've got a father and grandfather who have a background in science, and one of the things I've learnt now is I can change my attitude or opinion on things if I'm presented with good evidence, and sometimes contrary to what my friends would, you know, perhaps, you know, agree with me or not, but it's just being open, you know, to
I was just thinking,
not straight, hard, you know, like very dogmatic that is the only way.
I was just going to go
Yeah.
back to that, you know, that when we lost our crop
Yeah.
that year, in some respects that, you know, although it hurt us at the time, that did mean that we didn't have huge outlays for barrels and winemaking that
bottling, all
year,
that
and
costs.
because so what year was that? 2006. So 2000, we had 2007 wines in barrel. 2006, 2005, and 2004 wines pretty much in barrel. 4 was getting ready to bottle. We were selling 2003 wine. So what we ended up doing was just, you know, spreading.
Allowed us to catch up, really. It did,
spreading
without
the
having
wines that we
expenses,
had, knowing that they had to really go to, you know,
and
to
it kept,
stretch to
and
the
it kept
next
our
vintage,
reputation
so.
intact, because some wineries actually made wines that year from that really
all-
bad fruit,
yeah.
and their wines were terrible.
And we had a Halliday 5-star rating. You know, when you've got loyal customers, you don't want them, you want to keep them basically.
Yeah.
So if you bring out one sort of dodgy kind of, you know, wine that isn't a reflection of what you normally are producing, then they're never going to buy off you again. So we
And I think
had to
that's
make
our
that
strength
decision.
actually. We do, I think, better than most. We're really consistent year in, year out and across our range. A lot of wineries one year might make a cracker of a wine, but then the next year a wine's really average or even bad, you know,
And not just about
you know.
environment, but a lot of that is as well being small, that we planted in the right place, that we're working with nature, that Dave can really focus on what's happening in the vineyard. So if there is a problem arising, it arises on a small scale instead of a massive scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're all kind of,
Well,
important
being
factors
hands-on,
to-
you can actually deal with that. Not being in Perth where you come down every weekend or every second weekend
Yeah.
and suddenly something's got completely, completely out of hand.
Yeah, question?
Also,
You mentioned, oh sorry,
go.
you mentioned losing your fruit that you sent to the winemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you got a ticket for that?
Yeah.
Well, we had a double whammy there. So.
Yeah,
Or
I'd like to
carry
hear more
on.
about that. And what
Yeah, well, we
maybe-
get our wine made under contract, and this was actually over in the Prongerups where we had it. Now, actually, the whole winery's been abandoned. It's all the talk about karma, but we essentially grew some outstanding fruit, truly outstanding, and the winery was a cooperative of 4 wineries, so all the owners had their own agenda, and the staff were treated appallingly bad. I really liked the guys; they worked so hard there, but they gave their notice and left, and they didn't get new staff in place in time, and records got deleted, wines got mixed, wines got spoilt where they turned to vinegar, and
But they went ahead and
we had a
bottled
Swiss
some of
friend
our
who had
wines.
tasted our wine in barrel and said it was one of the best Cabernets he'd ever tasted, and was going to buy literally the entire production.
So we had a sale.
So it was like a
for our-
$60,000 sale, and we thought, yes, that's a really good start. And then we actually sent him bottles over, that not knowing that they were spoilt, and he'd organised very important tasting with these.
And
then-
this
and
is
then-
Switzerland, so it's a
You
lot
know.
about face and.
It is, and he
yeah,
sort of lost face because he said, look, I've got this small winery, they're amazing wines, and he actually thankfully tasted the wine before the tasting, and he contacted me, he said, I can't sell this wine, it's vinegar, and then we were really lucky that this is what I like about it, we went to winemakers we'd never met and said, this is what's happened, can you have a look at our wines? And all of them wrote reports for us, and so we had that happen, and then we had, at any one time, we've got 2 vintages worth of wine in the winery, because reds particularly spend 2 years in oak, so our following vintage, the wines all got mixed up, so they didn't know, the computer records all got deleted, they didn't know what was what,
They
so
tried to give us a completely.
give us wines that weren't
wine
ours,
that wasn't
and
ours,
Chardonnay that we'd matured in oak that wasn't oaked, and
Anyway,
Cabernet
it
that
was
was
very
14.5%, they tried to give us one that was 12.3,
So
under, and
following on from that,
Yeah.
what was your
well, we probably didn't go down the right path. I thought human,
Decent.
decency, and they'd give us some sort of compensation, and they basically stonewalled us, and we decided not to go through litigation. Obviously, we couldn't afford to, but we had a good friend who was a lawyer that on a sort